it's our 32nd birthday, but our 30th in here. And if you don't know, that this began originally as an investigating crop circles conference. So we always like to go back to them, and we always like to try to find people that have got a new approach or a new voice, if possible. So I need to tell you, I have known Barry Reynolds for an awful long time. Barry was leading the then Sussex branch of the Centre for Crop Circle Studies when I got interested in crop circles, and I learned that there were these people planning to gather. And we had our first meeting back in 1991, and I found out about Barry. Barry really is one of those people that should be given a lot more credit than he has received. He worked on the Centre for Crop Circle Studies database for years. He was one of the main branch conveners. So in those days, and I know this seems incredible now, pre-internet, right, the only way you'd find out what was going on was to be part of an organisation and get a magazine or know people to ring. And that was the way that it was back then. And Barry was such a central part of that. And then he kind of had to live his life and do lots of work. But now it's been great. He's come back to crop circles, and he started to look at his databases and realize with the new technology available today, you can do amazing things with showing us where past crop circles were. So this is a whole new way of doing it. I hope you're going to enjoy this. And a big hand, please, for Barry Reynolds.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, and what a pleasure it is to be here today. My name is Barry Reynolds, and I'd like to give you a new view over crop circles, those enigmatic patterns that have been appearing in the fields around us now for so very long. But first, a bit of background into myself so that you can understand the reasoning for me being here today. I've been immersed in technology for all of my life and for my entire career, spanning some 38 years. I started as a computer programmer, as we were known back in the early 1980s, and I worked my way up through the various levels within IT, ending up as head of IT department. And as such, I was responsible for rolling out new technology across the entire company, whatever that was. Meanwhile, my fascination with the unexplained led me into crop circle research from the early 1990s, setting up CCCS Sussex, which later became Southern Circular Research, arguably the leading crop circle research group in the world. And I can say that because the founder members of the group were people like Andy, Jason, Di, Marcus from Nexus magazine. And that's how we all met some 30 years ago. As well as running the Sussex group, I also played an active part in CCCS, the Centre for Crop Circle Studies. I was branch's convener and global database administrator for several years, which put me in the unique position of having every single crop formation globally pass across my desk. Newspaper cuttings, research material, scale drawings, anecdotes, you name it, I saw it. Consequently, I amassed an enormous amount of material. I even spoke here at the symposium way back in 1996, some 26 years ago. Family life and work commitments eventually caught up with me, and in the mid-noughties, so I parked everything until I stopped working at the end of 2019 to go travelling. The less said about that, the better. So instead, I started to go through my crop circle archives to see what I could do with all the material that I had amassed. And that brings us to the Sussex database. Anyone who knows me well will tell you that I love data and I love facts. So here's a few I pulled together after going through my vast archives. These relate solely to Sussex because that's where I live. I've lived my entire life there, and it's where our group did all the groundwork. There are 175 events recorded in the Sussex database. 10 are, or are probably, man-made. 3 aren't anything at all, but we recorded them because somebody originally thought they were. 5 are non-geometric, which I'm not going into today. Basically, they're odd squiggly lines and splodges. Not all crop formations are beautiful like we see around the walls today. That leaves us with 157 formations in Sussex to date, and it's these that I want us to look at in more detail. Now, interestingly, half of these have appeared at only 10 different locations, with 48 of them appearing at Patcham, Falmer, Woodingdean and Sompting. Even more incredibly, nearly half of all the formations in Sussex have appeared in only 29 fields, with many more appearing just over the hedge. So formations are not simply scattered everywhere. They cluster. And that interests me. And it's why I'm here today. Because I want to bring together my background, the Sussex database, and technology to show you crop formations in a way never seen before. Let me give you an example before we go on our journey. And please bear with me as I want to explain the technology before I show it. We're all used to seeing these amazing crop formations, and this is how we've been used to seeing them. Here are two from Denton in East Sussex in 1995 and 2000. They're great photos. They were taken by Mike Hubbard from his microlight, as drones hadn't been invented back then. Then someone will create a shadow diagram, usually to show the geometries, which is really important. But we have no context with the original photo as to the location within the surrounding landscape. So this is what I'm really after, the formation in its original context. Because if we look closely, we can see that the triangular area in the corner of the field is actually the same. So these two formations were in the same area of the same field 5 years apart. Today, some of the photos taken by drone, and we saw them yesterday, are fantastic at showing the formations within the landscape, but they're still limited to just that formation at the date the photos or the videos were taken. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow superimpose both formations onto the same photo? Because no one's ever done that before. Maybe we could somehow drop the shadow diagrams onto the fields and geolocate them exactly like this. And then we could pull it all together, zoom out, fly around like a drone, showcasing all the formations in one area historically, without the boundaries of time. Because no one's ever done that before, not in a single video. Well, we can. Welcome to Google Earth Pro. I know some of you don't like Google. Once upon a time, we had maps. Then we had Google Maps, and we had Street View. But now we have Google Earth Pro, which is pretty amazing. For those of you who have never seen this freeware, let's take a look at it and give you 2 quick tutorials to familiarize yourselves with what you're about to see. Okay, so we are searching for Denton in East Sussex, which is near Newhaven. We've clicked on search and Google Earth Pro zooms us in on the town. Okay, so I'm trying to find the field here that the photos were taken in, and we can see it here, and we can rotate and we can zoom in towards the field, and there it is. Now we're going to pause and take a look at a very specific feature, which is the time slider. You won't be able to read this at the back, so I'll let you know what it says. But this feature enables us to travel backwards and forwards in time through the different sets of satellite photos. So we see 2020, this is 2019, 2018, and we go back, 2016, this is every time the satellite flies over, it takes a different set of photos. 2014, then we go back, 2012, 2009, 8, and eventually we'll go back to 2004. And that's the earliest set of photos that it has. And that means that we have about 20 years worth of satellite imagery to use. And we'll be using this extensively later. So I wanted you to take a good look at it, see kind of how it works. And remember that there are no videos in what you're about to see today. This is all done by stitching together thousands of satellite photos taken over the last 20 years. Now, for the second tutorial, before we get going, Google Earth Pro allows you to drop pictures and photographs onto the land surface that you're looking at. So I can drop a 1995 photo onto the field to get a better idea of where it was. You can see the field boundary here, and with a bit of messing around, because this photo was taken from a microlight, you can eventually get a really good idea of where the formation actually was. We can zoom out and then see it within the surrounding landscape. But also, using a bit of photogrammetry, we can drop the shadow diagram onto the field really accurately, in exactly the place it appeared. I can then do the same with the 2000 formation, lining up the road and the triangular area, and we can then fly around the formation, and we can then replace the photo with the shadow diagram in the knowledge that, again, we have the exact location. Then for the first time, we can see the relationship between the two, had they both been there at the same time. Okay? I can now fly around them, and I can see them together outside the confines of the original photos, within the far wider landscape and without the boundaries of time. And this has never previously been done before, and it's why I'm here today. Let's take a look at Patcham. Patcham is a small town just north of Brighton, nestling on the southern slopes of the South Downs. It's bordered on the north side by the A27, which runs east-west across this part of Sussex. We're interested in a piece of land that's about 2.5 kilometres wide and about 1.5 kilometres from north to south. The story here starts in July 1991, when a formation appeared over 3 separate nights in a field just north of the A27, near a caravan site in the bottom right-hand corner. 2 ringed circles and what became known as the Sussex dumbbell appeared. A month later, in a field just the other side of the hill, another dumbbell appeared, very similar to the first one. The following year, the first field was revisited, and had the formation from the previous year still been there, the 1992 formation would have appeared within the middle of it. And again, it's another dumbbell. But of course, that's not the view that we used to get. The view we would have had would have been from the side of the hill, looking across a small valley. And we would have seen the formations like this. The same year, in 1992, but only 4 days later, another formation appeared, back in the same field as the formation from the previous year. This time slightly more complicated, as 3 circles joined together. Very reminiscent of the roadworks which were currently underway on the A27. So by the end of 1992, we had 4 formations in 2 different fields. 2 years later, in 1994, a single circle appeared at the top of Takedown Hill. Takedown Hill is the highest point just in this small area, and is here. There's a good old Sussex dew pond at the top of the hill, and a ploughed out tumulus just there. Whilst talking to the farmer about the formations in this area, he told us that actually there was another single circle at the top of the hill, in the corner of the field, possibly as far back as 1970. Nothing happened in this area for another 6 years. But in August 2000, a rather nice formation appeared in this field as a series of 21 circles back to back, as we can see, forming this very nice double arc of 4 arms, almost in the centre of the field. The following year, further up the road, a formation appeared, nestling now in the hills of the South Downs. A very nice formation with an interesting pathway across the middle of it, which was actually part of the formation. And not far from Ditchling Beacon itself, which is at the top of the hill in the top right-hand corner there, the highest point in this area. On the same night that this formation appeared, a second formation appeared back down near the one from the previous year. Again, another flowing arm of rings, this time next to a couple of circles, one of which itself was ringed. Again, we never see them like this. We would have been standing from the edge of the road, which here goes to the A27, from the A27 to Ditchling Beacon. And we would have seen them like this, from the edge of the road. If you'd have waited for another couple of years, a second formation would have appeared in a very similar place, on the same hill. Let's take a better look at that. As we swing around, we can see a beautiful flower of life. So that over now a period of 3 summers, we've got 3 wonderful formations, very close to each other. Staying in 2003, a couple of weeks later, a ringed circle appeared near the top of the field, very reminiscent of the formations from 10 years previously. As we pan round, you'll notice that Google Earth itself has now brought in a formation, which is actually from May 2004, and happened to be in the oilseed rape field when the satellite flew over and took the photographs, so you can see them from space. We can see really perfectly what the formation looked like. And what we'll do is we'll put the shadow diagram on it, because as we travel through time, it will disappear. Let's go back to the view from the road that we had of these 2 formations, which are only a few hundred meters away. And if we waited for another year to 2004, we'd see another formation appear in this field. You can see it's quite difficult here to make out what's happening. There are now so many formations in this field. So if we swing around and up then we'll be able to see how this complicated grouping of three formations now looks. The triangular triplet actually mutated the following night. The circles became larger, and this part filled in. In fact, if we colour it in blue, then we can clearly see the difference between these three formations. But it is quite amazing. And that's where the story ends at the moment in Patcham, over this extended period of time, from as early as the 1970s all the way through to 2004. In this area, just north of Patcham, just north of what's now the A27, and here we can see the extra formations brought in. And we can go back to how we started, and that's how it would have looked had they all been there at the same time. We're now going to travel further into East Sussex, into an interesting area in the heart of the Sussex countryside, an area with many ancient sites. About 9 miles southeast of Lewes, we find ourselves in the area around Alfriston and Wilmington, in a corridor about 3 miles by 1.5 miles. Here we find the Littlington White Horse, carved in 1838 above the Cuckmere River, the little-known cousin of the more famous Chalk Hill figure we'll see in a moment. More importantly, we'll find many early and middle Neolithic period features, and I want to cover these in some detail before we start our crop circle journey. I also want to emphasise how accurately I have attempted to locate some of these. Starting with the late Neolithic, late Bronze Age, 4-down round barrow and cross dyke, I've taken the Historic England archaeological maps and I've dropped them onto Google Earth, as Google Earth does not identify these features. I've then traced them in orange so that we'll be able to clearly see them. And as I mentioned, I've done this as accurately as is possible. Slightly to the northwest, we have the 56-metre Longberg long barrow, which I've traced the outer circumference of. Huntersburg, a 65-metre long barrow, appears at the top of the escarpment to the east and forms one end of a line of tumuli here on Wilmington Hill, and then with more on Windover Hill alongside the 68-metre long barrow. There are also more recent Roman flint mines. As these features are now marked, let's drop the Historic England overlaid maps and then take a look at the most prominent and most famous feature in this area, the Long Man of Wilmington. Here he is. We'll then zoom out, looking south towards the coast and the Seven Sisters. The story in this area starts at Rathfinney Farm on the 7th of July, 1984, when this famous photograph was taken at the foot of Cradle Hill by the Right Honourable Dennis Healey MP. It is the oldest irrefutable photograph of a crop formation in Sussex and enabled us to accurately locate the formation. It would be difficult envisaging a formation in this field today, as it is now part of the Rathfinney vineyard, and that is full of vines now. Moving forward a couple of years to 1986, we come across the first formation I ever read about, and which therefore started my 35-year odyssey to where I am today. Still on Rathfinney Farm, and reported in the Evening Argus at the time, I eventually located the large and small circles to this field, just along from the previous one. Staying at Rathfinny Farm, the site of most of the formations in this area, but travelling back to the field we started in, July 1990 saw this circle appear directly adjacent to the formation from 6 years previously. A few days later, a broken dumbbell appeared in Barley. Or was it a reference to the famous figure directly above it? 5 years pass before the next formation appears in this area, which we'll enjoy exactly as it appeared for a moment. This stunning four-armed quadruple-ringed circle was used by myself to present the latest scientific findings on the Magic and Mystery show. Electrical anomalies within it caused havoc to the camera crew during filming. Two months later, this wonderful double-nested yin-yang symbol appeared. At the foot of the Long Man. 19 years are now to pass before the area is visited again. When Google Earth picks up an astonishing 5-pointed star within 4 nested pentagrams within a ring, which appeared in wheat on the 3rd of July 2014. There's not a lot looking northwards, but if we sweep around, lo and behold, there's the Long Man again. At 126 feet in diameter, one of the questions I'm often asked is, do the points point at anything? Previously, we would have drawn lines on the Ordnance Survey map, but because the map is flat, it doesn't take into consideration elevation and hills. It's actually difficult to say. And when people say, oh, these two things line up, they've often drawn a line which is actually about 50 meters wide, and it hoovers up everything in sight. But let's give it a go with Google Earth. These blue lines are about 40 centimeters or 16 inches wide, and they've been drawn as accurately as I can, bearing in mind the formation is not 100% geometrically perfect, although it's pretty damn close. So the arms are 72 degrees apart. Let's take arm 1 and extend it out 2 miles. And there is absolutely nothing at all. Arm 2. We'll extend that out 2 miles. There's nothing. Arm 3. Okay, that looks a bit more promising. Let's zoom in on Huntersburg, Long Barrow. And we see that this arm just kisses the very top of the Long Barrow, about 0.6 of a mile away. I think it's an aircraft just landing. Arm 4. Okay, that looks interesting as well. Let's zoom in on 4 down at about 1.5 miles out. And it just kisses the end of the cross dike. Although we can't even see the formation from here. Finally, arm 5. Okay, that looks interesting too. Zooming in on Long Burr, we find the arm again just kisses the end of the Long Barrow some 2 miles out. And from here, we can actually see the other 2 sites. I've no idea what this means, but 3 of the arms do actually point at the end of 3 important Neolithic sites in this area. Six days after the pentagram, another formation appeared, which is again picked up by Google Earth. A ringed circle within a ring of 4 circles. It was quickly cut out by the farmer and again appeared at the foot of the long man. So zooming out a little, we can now begin to see this wonderful cluster of formations in this area. And if you were the long man, you would see this to your left, and you'd see this to your right. Then finally, a year ago, after a wait of another 7 years, this unusual formation appeared. We have one photo to add to the Google Earth image, and so combining it makes it look something like this. Swinging around 180 degrees shows us the long man. Then all of the formations below him over 31 years. Very close to the Neolithic features. And then finally, 37 years worth of formations in the surrounding fields. Let's take a look at West Sussex. To the west of Brighton and Hove, actually, in an area of glorious Sussex countryside. There's Brighton and Hove, and the area we want to take a look at is between Shoreham by Sea, Upper Beeding, and Stenning. There are 3 fields we're going to take a look at. Just north of Shoreham, north of the A27, and east of the River Adur. Just to the south of Upper Beeding, and to the southwest of Stenning. These 2 fields are about 1.75 miles apart, and the scar between the 2 is Shoreham Cement Works, which closed in 1991, and they are about 2.5 miles from this field. Our story starts at Mill Hill, just outside Shoreham, on the 10th of August 1990, when the first formation appeared in this area. In wheat, the circles all aligned and appeared to point towards an innocuous set of buildings at the end of the field. This building is in fact Buckingham Barn, which is listed as the remains of a chapel or the chancel of a church, probably dating to the 11th or 12th century, and is therefore one of the oldest buildings in this entire area. Moving forward to 1993, an insectogram, as they came to be known, appeared nearby on the 16th of July. This one seemed to have an antenna missing, and it also had Sussex's first triangle. Skipping forward another couple of years, this formation appeared near to the Ban Live Exports graffiti, which had been daubed in creosote by animal rights activists a few weeks before. It seemed to fit nicely next to the 2 formations in the field, especially as it too had a triangle. Staying in 1995, but now heading over to Stenning, the first of two formations appeared near to Cissbury Ring, which is in the top left-hand corner there. For obvious reasons, this formation became known as the Time Tunnel. 8 days later, and over in the Upper Beedingfield, this lovely formation appeared with similar traits to those in the Shoreham Field. Appearing on a slope directly next to the South Downs Way, it was highly visible from the surrounding area. Not to be outdone, the Stenning Field was revisited 2 days after this, so that we had 4 formations in 17 days in this small area. The formation was directly next to the first one and gave some incredible results from the crop sampling that we took, which was sent off to the USA for analysis. We then had to wait another 4 years, almost to the day, before a formation returned to this area, when an extremely interesting formation appeared on the 25th of July, 1999. With 16 boxes and numerous satellite circles, it completely overlaid the area the 1995 formation appeared in. And I'll show it in blue to distinguish it from the two. The similarity between parts of the two formations is really interesting. 1999 also saw the Shoreham Field revisited, with this oddity, perhaps pointing directly at the medieval church. Whatever it represented, it certainly seemed to fit with the others in this field. Finally, in 2002, a circle and a kind of 3-leaf clover with an immaculate lay appeared back in the Upper Beedingfield. The clover leaf shape, thus, was part of each of the formations that appeared in this field. So 12 years, 9 formations, 3 fields, that when lined up look like this. Didn't think it was coming then. And the thing to bear in mind here is that these formations just don't look like any of the others we've seen so far. They form their own progression and their own story in this area. For the final part of our journey today, we're not travelling far at all from the Shoreham and Upper Beeding area. I've left the fields at the beginning so you can see where they were, and we're about a mile to the southwest. We come to Sompting, Lancing and Worthing. This approximately triangular area we're going to look at is steeped in ancient history. As an example, a spectacular Bronze Age hoard was found here, and there are numerous prehistoric bowl barrows on the escarpment here, directly above Sompting Cross Dyke, which is considerably over a mile long and spans the whole of this area. These represent only a small number of the prehistoric sites in this area. The Sompting story starts in July 1990, when this triple inline dumbbell appeared in the corner of this field. Only 100 metres from where 17 late Bronze Age socketed axe heads were found in 1946. Perhaps there is a nod to this find in the design. June 1992, saw this lovely ringed circle with broken rings appear the night after the larger circle to its northwest. At 130 feet in diameter, it was our largest formation to date. The nearby disused chalk pit is known as Hill Barn Pit and is an important geological feature on the chalk downs because the exposed chalk reveals a deposit layer of what is known as Tarrant chalk, and this has provided the opportunity to recover some important fossils. We're now going to jump 24 years into the future, to the year 2016, where we can see a gigantic scar running across this field. This scar runs across the entire area, and it's the high voltage cable from the huge offshore wind farm. From its landfall in Lancing up to the substation at Twynham, it temporarily obliterated 16 miles of countryside. Two days later, this appeared south of Sompting. Unfortunately, we never got around to visiting it, and there is some debate about whether or not it was made by some locals. But it's included because a triangular triplet with a large central circle appeared in the same field a year later. The central circle was 65 feet across, and a lovely view was obtainable from a small block of flats at the edge of the field. "16 days after that, on the 23rd of June, a lovely Celtic cross appeared, only 25 feet from high voltage overhead cables that run across this field. Now, interestingly, this formation has caused some controversial debate amongst archaeologists. In this part of Sussex, there is a missing section of Marbury's Roman Road number 153. No one has ever been able to work out where it went. However, recent Google Earth images, like this one from 2015, show a faint line across the field. There we go. This in turn sparked debate that the missing section of road is actually here, and that the Google Earth image from 2001 is the earliest aerial photo of it. But going back to our crop formation from 1993, we can see the same line even more clearly underneath the formation. So I threw this photo into the debate, saying that this was the earliest known photo. And in fact, at the time it appeared, the farmer told us that it was a water pipe that crossed the field and not a Roman road. Needless to say, my input to the debate was not welcomed. The same night, the 23rd of June 1993, this rather odd formation, affectionately known as the Mexican cyclist kebab, started to appear. Taking 3 separate nights over 7 days, it was, to say the very least, odd. Whilst this formation was busy mutating, another Celtic cross appeared across the valley. Not far from Cissbury Ring, it was one of only 2 formations in the entirety of this area to appear in barley, not wheat. The additional satellite circle appeared 18 days later, which left us wondering whether this was part of the original formation, just a bit late, or a completely new one. And yes, these 3 formations do actually form a straight line. Doesn't look straight, but it is. It's on Google Earth. This part of June 1993 was busy in this area, and the following night saw the appearance of the sperm, an oval ring with a long wiggly tail, which caused more head scratching amongst the group. The following year again saw 2 formations appear on the same night, the 6th of June. Firstly here, a 75 feet diameter circle behind the local tip. And secondly, here, a ringed circle with a centre tuft about half a mile away. In the next field, but just over the hedge from the previous year's kebab. So we now have a nice number of formations appearing within the bounds of the 3,000-year-old cross dike. Talking of kebabs, a second one turned up the following month, taking 2 nights of the 14th and the 15th of July to fully appear. 2 weeks later, back at the chalk pit field, 3 circles appeared aligned due north-south. The 3 circles also accurately represented the 3 sizes of circle defined by a regular pentagram, as shown here. They also completely overlaid the area of the formation from 2 years prior. And like the previous formation here, if we time travel forward to 2016, the site of the offshore wind farm cable just misses it. 1996 saw a single circle appear somewhere in the area, although we don't know exactly where. So we're skipped to 1999, when another Celtic cross appeared on the 14th of June. Originally a single circle, the ring and 4 dislodged circles appeared the following night. Again, we can see the Roman road, or the water pipe, clearly going underneath the formation. These 2, 6 years apart, would have just touched had they been there together and appear just outside the cross dike. A few days later, a triangular triplet appeared in a field of barley without tram lines, so we never visited it as we didn't wish to disturb the crop. But it was the same field, the same part of the field, and the same design, albeit slightly larger, as the one from 6 years previously. So we begin to see a real pairing of formations in this area, as if one isn't enough. The following year, the millennium, saw a 140-foot, 6-petaled flower appear in the very corner of this field, just above the circle from 1994, and in the far corner of the cross dike. Two years after this, and daringly close to so many houses, the 3rd of June 2002 saw a ringed circle with 2 spinning arms appear, with locals reporting bright lights over the field that night. "20 days later, this interesting convex equilateral triangle within a lattice of 3 rings appeared back near the kebab from 1993. And near several other formations from previous years. A year later, and the 1st of June 2003 saw us back in the field, so close to houses, with a ring containing 12 arcs surrounding a ringed circle with 6 circles. At over 200 feet in total diameter, it was all laid anti-clockwise, with the exception of the outer ring, which was clockwise. It's shown in blue to distinguish it from the formation from the previous year, the site of which it overlaid. 2004 saw a 4-armed spinner appear in a field to the back of this area. And while some questions were raised as to the authenticity of the near 300-foot formation, if we travel forwards in time, we see that it too bordered on the site of the later wind farm cable. In 2005 saw a 180-foot diameter ring circle back in the field surrounded on 3 sides by houses. Alongside the others from 2002 and 2003, this small area now housed 3 formations, plus an additional 2 in the next field. 12 years, 5 formations, all with similar geometrical properties. The last formation to appear in this general area was again in 2005. This time, on the 17th of July, Sussex received its first 5-pointed star inside a ring pentagram with 5 satellites. You may remember that the second pentagram was over near the Long Man of Wilmington. And here are layered alongside and highlight the similar parts of both formations. It was very close to the other 2 in this field, and others over the hedge from times gone by. Nestled within the cross dyke and the surrounding fields. And that's where it ends in Sompting. We've had nothing since 2005. Well, almost nothing. In 2020, the Lichpole estate, which owns this field, planted a maize, highlighting the plight of bees. The bee was here in the middle. There's its head, its thorax, and its abdomen. The maize entrance was in the centre of the field, just there, opposite a temporary car park which was just there. And the bee in the centre was about here, flying into its crop formation hive. I spoke to the German guy who designed the maze on his computer, and he had no idea crop formations had ever appeared in this field. So it was just a coincidence. And there we have the Sompting Triangle. And that's all we have time for today. I hope you've enjoyed seeing the new view over crop circles and seen how technology has moved on in recent years. My name is Barry Reynolds, and you're more than welcome to get in contact with me via the links shown below. Thank you.
Oh.